into group introductions, breakout introductions in a second. Wait a second. You've got us going into there. Oh, I'm sorry. You should have a little slide, a little button up there that says that you accept being recorded, and we're good. You can go to the next slide there, Kara, and the next slide. So I'm the process or the session facilitator today, and Sarah, that's me, and Sarah is running the Zoom controls in the background. I have been recently anointed a PhD a couple years ago and have been diving into mapping, and Christine has been mentoring me, and actually everybody in the Master Mappers has been mentoring me and me back as much as possible. We're learning to, some of us are learning together. Made a bunch of maps now and continue to learn about this. Sarah, you want to introduce yourself? You're on mute.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everybody. This is Sarah Shanahan. I'm Director of Community Management for the ReAmp Network. And I've been working closely with Jim and especially with Christine and her partner, Tim, to do social systems mapping work. We've been building a map of our own network and really trying to utilize that. And even though I'm the Zoom facilitator today, I really enjoy attending these calls because I always learn so many new things just by listening to all of you, seeing some of these maps, and so I'm excited to be here today.
Great. And Christine, you want to introduce yourself?
Do we, are we gonna, so we have the map presenter introduce last, and okay. So then the question is, are we gonna break into small, or are we gonna just do it together?
Let's do small groups.
Okay.
So you can pull the slide back off, stop sharing, Kara. So we're gonna just jump into small groups to introduce yourselves to each other, and the introduction is maybe very briefly where you are and who you are, but primarily, what are you here for today? What is it that is moving you to be pursuing mapping, thinking the mapping lens or the network lens? How does any of this relate to the work that you do in the world? And we've got, what have we got, about 3 minutes each way, 6 minutes?
Sure.
Yeah. So you'll dive into a dyad here in a second when Sarah puts us in them. I'll give you a bump about 3 minutes, and talk about your passion and your mapping, or the work that you do that you think this might be.
You ready, Jim?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back, Kim, David, Kara.
Did you close the thing, Sarah?
I gave them 60 seconds, so if they were done, they're coming back now.
And okay. I hit the button and I should not have. Can I go back or not?
That person.
No.
You're stuck here now. You're stuck with us forever now, Kim. I'm sorry. That's right. Everybody's coming back.
We're back.
Oh, to my small group, I'm so sorry I left. That was an accident.
No problem.
We have a lot of permission to hold this whole thing loosely. The technology really supports us well, but all sorts of stuff happened here, and it may during the rest of this. But it's always brutal being torn out of these breakouts. But we're back here. So, Christine, should we just jump into the?
Sure.
Anything?
Yeah, 1 second. Okay. Can you see a map? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm actually going to put a link to this map in the chat so that if you're like me, which means I just like to get my hands on things and I get really impatient. Wait, where's my chat box? Oh, here. I just want to like zoom around really fast. You can do that, or you can you can go through it with the rest of us, but I just put a link to this map in the chat if you're interested. So this map was initiated by June Holly. There's June, and I think you all know June. And June had previously had a network map of the consultants that she was aware of that do network weaving consulting or are staff of networks. And she wanted to put it into Kumu, and she met Christina Bowen at a systems thinking conference, and they started talking about mapping. And Christina is back in the early days of Kumu. There was a handful of early adopters who became, like super whiz bang experts of Kumu, and Christina was one of them, and I was one of them, and Drew Mackey, who's not with us, was one of them, and so we're called. Then there's some others, and they called us Kumu Kumus. Kumu meaning like guru, teacher, wise, elder, sort of guide kind of thing. So anyway, so Christina and I went. So Christina was a Kumu Kumu, and June asked her to work on this map with her. Christina and I go back. We've been in contact since the beginning of Kumu, since we were Kumu Kumus, and we were there were very few female Kumu Kumus, so we bonded around that. And so Christina and June started working on this, started talking about doing this map of the consultants in June's network. And Christina knew about sumApp, but she had not yet had an opportunity to try it out. So she pinged me and said, hey, you think we could use sumApp? And I said, sure, and gave them an account, and ended up giving a little bit of advice to this map. But for the most part, this is June and Christina's project. And it's public, and I asked them permission to share it with you, and they said yes. So it was really fun for me to do this, to sort of be part of this, a little teeny bit part of this project, and to watch another Kumu expert at work, because she sort of approached things a little differently than Tim and I do, and we learned some things from her, and she learned some things from us, and so we adapted as a result of that. So that was fun. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to point out before I jump into the map is there are actually two different network maps or social system maps related to June Holly and or the June Holly Network Weaver Facebook page. This is the consultants map, which was done by, like I said, June and Christina and me a little bit. But there's another map, which the master mappers, Sarah's one of them, Jim Best is another one, and there's a few other people who about a year and a half ago, I started to convene this group to help learn more social system mapping skills and help disseminate the skills further, because Tim and I just don't have enough time in the day to help as many people who want to learn it. So we started to try and ripple our skill set out, and the master mappers was the core function for that. And so the master mappers wanted to make to do a project to have some hands-on experience, and decided that the Facebook, the June's Network Weaver Facebook group was probably the best target network to map. And so Jim and Sarah and some other people have been working on the Facebook map, and that's not this map. So just wanted to be really clear that this is the consultants map. So there's the consultants map, and then there's the Facebook page map. And so if you see the Facebook map, if you get invited to be on the Facebook map, that's the consultants map is a different thing. And this was, the population on this map was basically hand curated by June. So this was an invitation only, June invites you kind of a map. So this is one of the things that I really, so for those of you who aren't familiar with these kinds of maps, June or Christina made these great pop-ups so we can see a little bit about a person just by hovering over them. We can also, if we click on the person, see a side panel that has all the information that they gave in their sumApp survey. I'm going to take a quick step backwards because I didn't do this yet. This is the sumApp interface for those of you who aren't familiar with it. This is what we call the bio page, just a picture and a little brief information about yourself. Then there's a survey page. Sometimes people call it a profile page. all of the information, that you give in this page is what shows up in the side panel. So if a person left question empty, that information isn't on the side panel, and whatever they put there shows up here. And then the sort of the core of sumApp is the connections page, which is where people can say who they know, who they've worked with. So we call these the connection tiles. If I pop this one open, I can say how I relate to that person. All of this is customizable. All of the survey questions and all the connection questions are customizable. So all of the data that you see, or all the information that you see in this map comes straight from Kumu, or from sumApp. So this side panel can open and close just by clicking on that thing or by hitting your tab key. And then what we usually do is make different views. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, here's a data set. We could look at it this way, we could look at it that way. With any big data set, as anybody know, any of you, if you work with data, you know, there's like, you want to look at it from this angle, from that angle, from another angle. So those are all different. What we do is we set up what are called different views, which it's all the same data, it's just a different way of presenting the data. And what I just did was I just clicked on the background of the map. And if you click on the background, if you click on a person, you're selecting that person and their information will show up on the side panel. If you don't have anything selected, you get what we call the map side panel. And so Christina set up several different views, which I'm going to walk you through in a second. This full map side panel is all editable. So this is all custom. This is Christina's way of presenting maps. She's got a little bit of instructions here, and then she has a link to all the different views that she's created. So this first view is just the people in the network and the organizations that they said they were part of. So let's see, Pablo, and I'm just gonna, selecting Pablo, and now I'm going to focus just on Pablo, so I'm gonna take everything else off. So these are the 4 organizations that Pablo said he's part of. And that's the smaller nodes didn't provide any data. They're in the sumApp list, but they didn't answer questions. And then the bigger nodes obviously did provide data. So this first view is just a directory sort of a view where we can search up here. We can zoom in, we can see more information about that person, and that's pretty much what we do with this view. And Christina made a geographic view, and this, it's not the most elegant geographic representation that you can find. I mean, in Kumu, you can't get a super elegant one, but this is what you can get, and it's not bad. It shows sort of the reach of the various people in the map. Then Christina made a services map or view. So in the survey, she asked, they asked questions about what services do these various people provide? And then each one of these labels down here is a button. So all of these people now provide communication ecosystems for networks. So there's Ben, who's in the room, in the Zoom room with us right now. So you can click on those, and you can say, well, yeah, so in this instance, it's a one. You click on one and it filters based on who said they offer that sort of thing. And then if you hover on the dots, where did the dots go? Oh, I guess she just means that. And then it will also show you that information about them. Then Christina has a social graph map, and this is where we see the relationships. So now we can see who knows who. And in sumApp, if you remember when I popped open that tile, there were 3 questions. So the degrees of connectedness were, we've been in conversations or training together, we've collaborated, we're collaborative friends, or we've done professional work together. And so those are the, when we filter up here. So and those of you who are used to maps that Tim and I make, you can see that this is a slightly different paradigm for filtering. It's, I think, you know, we're all, you know, sort of learning from each other and changing our, you know, like sort of gradually all increasing, upping our skill set. But there's no better or worse for how this is done. But so these are people who've collaborated with each other. These are people who have been in conversation or training together. And these are people who have worked on, have done paid work together. So let's go to, so that's the social graph. Here we can see in the work context, we can see, we can cluster by various questions that were asked in sumApp. So these are the areas that different people work in, community building or children and youth. So you can cluster by that, or you can cluster by what kinds of clients they have, such as business or academic, and or by the services they provide. And I'm going to uncheck these so that we can just see their services. And so this is a way of what I've heard from June. So I'm not saying this is officially her intention, or I'm not speaking for her, but this is my understanding from our you know, so me sort of reading between the lines, is sort of the purpose of that. One of the purposes of this map is to help the consultants in the map share skills and start to learn from, you know, reach out to learn more from each other. So if I'm terrible at facilitation, but I'm good at mapping, I might reach out to somebody who's good at facilitation and say, would you partner with me on a project? Because it's going to need a lot more facilitation than I'm comfortable doing, that sort of thing. So part of it is to help the consultants collaborate more with each other. But the other part of sort of goal of this map is to promote the network weavers on the map, to spread, you know, to help promote the field and to spread, to gain more work for everybody. So to the end of sharing skills, Christina made two different ways of doing that. One is the skills finder, where you can you can cluster on, or you can filter on the skills that people said that they have or don't have. Or you can cluster or filter on the skills that people said that they need help with. So that's one way of doing that. And another way of doing that is to show both on at the same time. No, these are, sorry, I didn't get super clear enough ahead of time. So these are the skills needed. So now they're clustering by those skills rather than filtering, and then skills offered. So two different ways of looking at that. So I'm going to stop there and let you ask questions about the map, and I'll leave the map up in case we want to like go from one view to a different view. But any questions about the map?
Yeah, I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to create the map and the survey that goes with it, you can add in people or organizations who haven't actually submitted anything to a survey. It looks like they're just dots that don't have any info. Is that correct? Yeah,
you can load a list of names into sumApp, and if they're in the list of names, you actually can toggle them off and on to not show or to show in the map. So if you don't want them to show, but the default, and that's a new feature, but what it generally is if you load a list, they're on the map, and okay, they may or may not respond to the survey. David.
Thanks.
My question is, was this an iterative process where you actually started simple and kept adding, or was it?
Not so much, no. I mean, that's a process that I advocate, and when it's a project that I'm working on, I try very hard to use the iterative process. In this instance, no. I mean, Christina and June were on the map, and me and Tim were on the map, and but June got it pretty much perfect the way she felt was perfect. And then we launched it and just pushed it to everybody. So we did not do that feedback iterative loop. If I'm understanding your question correctly. Anyone else?
So Christine, that the map was built in somewhat of a top-down fashion as opposed to a participatory design, co-design.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful map. There's so much here. This is incredible. I have a question. You've got organizations on here, and sumApp typically works with, was sumApp used to front end this? Of course it was.
Yes, well, so let me just explain that to you. Yes, this data, there's no tweaking of the data, no wrangling. It's just the live link going straight from sumApp right into the map. So there's no extra fiddling. How Christina got these organizations was, let me show you.
I just updated my organization list while we were on the call too, actually. It shows that now.
So we'll refresh that and see if you're, okay. So she just explains right here to put a pipe separator. If there's a pipe separator and you cluster, they will show up as separate. I mean, each one will show up as a separate node in your clusters. This is the simplest, least robust way of doing it, but it's for instance, if you had 10 people in the same organization and they all spelled it differently, it would show up as look like 10 different organizations rather than standardizing. There's no way to standardize the names in this, but that's what she was able to do in that instance. And so that's why you're seeing those organizations. It's not like we asked about relationships to organizations with the feature that we're working on. Other questions?
This
Hey,
is Tom.
Christine, we just had a question come through the chat really quick. It's from Kim. She says this map's really great, and just curious about safety. Like, is that an issue, or how are concerns around safety addressed in these maps, or in this one in particular?
Safety is an issue in terms of everybody's concerned about safety and everybody's concerned about data privacy, and so it's always a question, and it's always a thing that needs to be addressed. So sumApp is completely private. I mean, it's just the only people who ever see the data in sumApp. So the only people who ever see it from this perspective are people who have been invited to be on the map in one form or another. The map also, so what I was showing you here is the map in Kumu, and I'm going to explain the difference before I get into the differences around security, but this is the Kumu platform. If you're in Kumu, so this is how so sumApp gathers the data and Kumu visualizes the data. In Kumu, you can have either a private map or a public map. If your map is public, all the data is findable. There's no security. It is what it is. Some people go that route. This particular map is a public map, which is why I can even share it with you. Most of our maps are private maps, and I can't share them with you. But if a map is private, what that means is that you can give access in Kumu to people to see it, and that's in Kumu, the only way they can see it is if you give that account access to view the map. We do a thing with sumApp where, so this is the Kumu, the map live in Kumu, but you can take a link out of Kumu and embed a map somewhere else. And in sumApp, we give you the option to embed the map actually right into the sumApp interface. So your users don't have to deal with two interfaces, or your network. They give their info, answer the survey, update their connections, and then they see the map right in the sumApp interface. So if you have a private map, this is the way, the easiest and most straightforward way to give everyone in the network access to the map. In sumApp, if your map is private, basically what that means is that the only people who can see the map are people who are on the map. There's no way to control, like, you know, if this person decides to start showing the map, you know, to everybody she knows, or, you know, get up on stage in front of 5,000 people and walk through the map, you know, that's a personal behavior. There's no technical way of preventing somebody from doing that. But generally, in most situations, people recognize it's a private map. It's up to me to help keep it private. But there's no technical way of people accessing it without some interpersonal thing. A couple more caveats. One is nothing is not hackable. So we do our best. All of our data is encrypted as it goes back and forth between Kumu. But if it's super, like, you know, if it's a thing where it's life and death privacy, that's you know, I can't guarantee that it's not breachable. You know, we're up to the industry standards, and Kumu appears to be as well. And I can't vouch for Kumu being more than that, but so I hope that answers the question.
And you've also chosen here not to ask the question about contact info. There's no email, there's no telephone number in this.
Right.
Case.
I didn't choose that.
Right, the designers did. So they
Yeah.
must have that information on the side outside of the map.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't quite, we asked for a website.
Right.
Yeah. So, right. So that's sort of a little bit of a, you know, whatever. Okay, David, and then I'll stop and we'll have general questions.
So to return to this incremental idea, so in that explanation, you showed us how the organizations a member of were pipe delimited,
Mm-hmm.
and that the danger of the pipe delimiting is if there's 10 ways of naming an organization, you get 10 of them. The incremental piece would be, would I use a strategy where I keep things kind of as a text field until I gather enough information that I could like turn them into a drop-down list that would prevent the duplications?
Yeah, that would definitely be, that's one of the beauties of the incremental approach, is that you can first discover what the
Yes.
possible standardized needs population is, and then you can stick them into the right format so that they're standardized for use. Yes, yep, great. So I'm thinking maybe I will stop sharing and we'll move to just more general questions and answers, which Sarah will, looking at the questions that you put into the registration form. So I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, well, actually, Christine, maybe not, because I think maybe this first set of questions comes back to you, but there's a couple of them in here just asking about the cost of this. And I think related to that too, like, are there different types of mapping that you could do that also may, like, is there one way that's maybe cheaper than another way, and just maybe cost overall?
Okay, so there's, let's say there's sort of like 3 categories or 3 buckets of costs. One bucket is the sumApp account cost, which depending on the complexity of the account you need. So we have a tiered account system where there's a free account, which just has connections and doesn't have a survey. There's a basic account, which has only one connection question. And so for most people's needs, it works fine, especially when they're just getting started. And then so that's 2, there's tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4. The tier 2 account is $15 a month or 20% off if you get it by the year. And the tier 4 account is $45 a month or 20% off if you get it by the year. So that's the sumApp bucket cost. There's a cost related to Kumu if you make your project private. So if you make it a public project, you can have an account for free and your map can be free. So that's one of the reasons people will sometimes have a public map. If you need a private map, the cost can be $10 a month or $29 a month, depending on if you have a personal account or an organizational account. An organizational account has more layers of permissions. Those are the bottom line. You have to have those two accounts to do this kind of mapping. And so that's the least you could spend. Then the cost of making a map itself really depends on how robust you want it to be, how sophisticated your expectations are. You can, like people in this chat, make their own maps, and it's just a matter of how much time do they spend, so they make them for free. You can hire Tim and I to make a map, and then a map like this would be somewhere between $7,500 and $10,000 for us to do the work. There's a little more complexity underlying the maps we make than this particular one that you can't see, but that would be part of that fee. And you know, Sarah's maps, we layer in data from all kinds of other places, and it could get really much more expensive than that. But that's sort of, you know, for what you're looking at, that's the range from just the accounts to professional, fast turnaround, know what we're doing. You pay for what you get, sort of up to, for this, roughly 10 grand.
And I put the sumApp pricing table in the chat.
Thanks.
That's just
That's
sumApp.
just, yeah.
It's not Kumu.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of like how much does a website cost? Well, it really depends on your website. You know, you can get a website for free that's fairly simple that you make yourself, or you can become very sophisticated website builder and still have it for next to free, but with, you know, you've built up a skill set to maintain it and to create it, or you can hire other people to do it for you, and it can be anywhere from, you know, a few $100s to, you know, $500,000 depending on what you want. So
cool. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
This is Tom. I have a question. How do you see a map like the one June has functioning over time in terms of keeping data accurate, up to date, or adding new people to a map like that?
So in sumApp, all you have to do is just add a name, or there's even a function where you can just use there's what's called an opt-in link. You can disseminate the opt-in link and people just add themselves to the map. And if you don't change anything, if you're not using an iterative approach, this is done. Like, so June has this map. If all she wants to do is add some new people, the link will just add them right into the map, and it will stay, you know, to the degree that people add themselves and to the degree that she can convince people to go in and update their connections over time, the technical work will be done. If she wants to make changes, if she wants to add new questions, if she wants to, you know, do anything that interferes with how the map is set up data-wise, then someone has to go back in and do that. But technically, once there's no more moving parts, it's a done deal until the map gets too big for Kumu to handle. Hope that answered that question.
Thank you.
Sarah, what other?
Yeah, well, we got one coming in the chat here from Jeff. I don't know, Jeff, did you want to just take yourself off of mute and jump in here with your questions?
Sure. Yeah, so in looking at the different tiers, it seems like you have like 1, 3, and 5 projects that you can subscribe to. And I'm thinking that I'm going to need a sandbox to experiment and keep going back to and trying new things before I roll that out. Would I have to get at least a 3 project count level to be able to do that?
Well, it shouldn't be a problem to experiment with one. I mean, like if you just have one problem, you should be able to experiment with that, because it doesn't, everything in sumApp is designed to be editable and to be able to change. So for instance, you could be in the middle of a project of incoming data and say, oh, that particular question isn't phrased right, I'm going to go fix it. And, or that particular option isn't phrased right, I'm going to go fix it. And the changes just flow through. So so on the one hand, yes, if you really want to keep your tests separate from a master project, yes, then you would need to do that. And you might not need to do that. Just depends on how careful you need to be.
Yeah, based on my past experience, I'm always expecting that I need to experiment and vet it with others before I do that. The other follow-up is that I noticed on your site you're developing this new dual element person org functionality. I'd love to hear about that because it actually seems really well suited to the project that I have in mind.
So just back to the what you're referring to, sharing things with people, that sounds like what David was asking about the iterative approach. So that's part of the iterative approach is you just make a draft and then get feedback and then you tweak the actual project. So I'm still saying you might not need an extra project. It might be extra work to have an extra project when we designed it so that you can do that testing iterative going back, and then whatever doesn't get changed, whatever gets kept, people don't have to keep updating their data. Okay, so just if you think of it iteratively, then that sort of changes the idea of test. Yes, so when we first started, we made sumApp was the core, as I said, the core is that the relationship tiles saying how well I know each person. And we initially envisioned the whole thing as being a person-to-person network. We're not really interested in organization-to-organization networks. But then we got clients who insisted it had to be an organization-to-organization project. So we surrendered, and that's how we got to 4 tiers, because we had to edit some of the texts in the thing. And so now you can, if you go to tier 4, you can edit the text so it's appropriate to whether it's a project or an initiative or a group or whatever. But there's 2 challenges to that. There's a few challenges, one of which is this like standardizing the organization names, which David addressed, and that would work beautifully. But often people want, like, the questions about an organization are different than the questions about a person. Like I have different demographics than my organization does. And so you actually often need 2 totally separate survey types for organization to organization. And then the relationships between organizations are different than the relationships between people. So then you need 2 separate relationship types. And you can do that already. And we've done that with clients where they have 2 projects. One is an org to org project and one is a person to person project. So there's people questions, people relationship questions, different sumApp project with org questions and org relationship questions. But what you can't do, and this is what our upcoming feature is trying to do, or we're close, is asking about the relationships between people in organizations, which again are different than people to people questions or org to org questions, and they're also so the interface. What our interface will do is you'll have an org project set up and you'll have a person project set up. And those can be separate. They can have been around for a couple of years, each of them. And then you'll just click on a checkbox and it will generate a new connection tab in which you can ask questions that say, what's your personal relationship to this particular organization? Such as, I'm the founder, I'm on the board, I fund it, I work there, I volunteer there, I protest against this organization, whatever it is. And so then you'll have that connecting question set, and it will also combine all the data output into one output, so you can put all of it into one map. So that's on the way. Yeah.
And what's the timeline on that? And can I just start with the existing features and then be able to migrate into that?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
You can just set up your first 2 projects. Go ahead and then get them set up. And I think that since you're just starting, it would be really wise for you to work through those before you have this third layer, because then your mind will be more clear what's going on where, and because it can be a little confusing just keeping track
Right.
of, because we're looking at same things from all these different angles, and your head has to sort of get practice and do
Sure.
Yeah.
So I will need at least 2 projects. I'll need the person-to-person and the org-to-org.
Yes, in which
So we're
case,
back to that.
yes.
Yeah, and also it looks like, since I do have a little bit of grant funding, it looks like the tier 4 is probably what I just need to go with something this complicated.
You will, because this blinking feature is only in tier 4.
Okay, great. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's very helpful.
Yep.
Let me do a time check here. We've got about 6 minutes before the top of the hour. Some of us are willing to stay over for another half hour and just have open questions and so forth. But if there's anything you want to wrap up with, Christine and or Sarah, if we have time for another question, but you guys figure that out.
Yeah. Thanks for the check. I will definitely stay for an extra half hour. That's optional. So Sarah, why don't we do a last 5 minutes and closure for those who aren't staying for the extra half hour, and then we'll move into that.
Yeah, you know, as I was looking through the questions that came through registration, I feel like we probably only have time for one of these, but there's 2 themes that were emerging. One is, you know, people just being really interested to hear more about how you're like actually practicing this in your network, right? How are you teaching other network members to use it? You know, how do you keep it alive? How are you maintaining it? How do you maintain its relevance and usefulness? And then the other one that I see emerging here is some questions about like, how do you evaluate this? Like, how do you know that it's working? Like, what outcomes are coming from this? Like, how do you know that this is worth that investment?
So, okay, my first thought, yeah, well, my first thought is, okay, these are really big questions, and they're also really good definitions for the deep dive conversations. So I think we should, Kara, if you would write those 2 down, we'll schedule those. One is evidence evaluation and promoting it and keeping it going. I think those are really deep, big conversations that we could spend a whole hour talking about easily. And the first question I was thinking, well, you're the network practitioner. Maybe you should answer that, the first question of how are you doing? Because you're sort of at the leading edge of that.
Yeah, with our members, you know, I will say that this has definitely been an area that's been challenging for us. You know, I think in our visioning of this, you know, we imagine that, yeah, we're going to build this map and they're going to come, right? Like our members are going to be so excited about it, they're going to use it. And part of that is true. Like they see the map, they do get really inspired and excited about it and really start to realize what the network is about. It's about people, right? And it's about our connection and relationship to other people. So that really kind of gives people like that aha. What we haven't really seen in terms of behavior is people wanting to go fishing for themselves, like feeling that like ownership over it or feeling the comfortability around it to want to go in and use the map for themselves. So what we've been trying to do is we've been really first and foremost as staff, like really building our own practice and habit around it. Like, are we using the map all the time, right? Or whether we know the answer is true or not, or we think we know the answer, whatever it is, whatever we're trying to look for or understand in the network, like just having a practice of going to the map and using it for ourselves. And then as we do that, right, like we're demonstrating that leadership, we're building that comfortability for ourselves, and then we're able to then work with members in a little bit more one-on-one context, right? Oh, you're working on this project. Well, hey, let's sit down together and explore the map and see who you know or what you might be looking for in terms of skills or community serve, things like that. So we're really trying to build that for ourselves. We're really trying to start to touch members that way. But I think there's a lot in this field overall to learn into how we like give people that understanding, right? This is a new visual language. It's a new way of seeing the network. How do we help them build the capacity around it? How do we make them feel that ownership and comfortability about it for using it for themselves? I do think that's just going to be something that's taking time because this is all brand new for people. So it's a work in progress.
Yep.
Christine, do you want to talk about the new structure for the OnRamp series, the new cadence, very quickly?
Sure. So Katie's jumping off. Thanks for joining us. So we used to do this, we used to do this kind of a structure every other week, but this is a sort of an introductory session for making sure that people even know what a social system map looks like, just getting them introduced to others and just getting our toes wet. But as you notice, what always comes up is a need for bigger discussions around things that don't have a quick 3-sentence answer. And so what we're doing is now we're going to have once a month, we're going to have on the second Monday, we're going to have this OnRamp structure. So if you know of people who are new to social system mapping and just want an introduction, this is the perfect structure for that. It's also a place where we would love for those of you who aren't brand new, who have maps, who are experienced, to come and help answer questions, give your experience, share maps, and just sort of like help build the community of practice and be a familiar face and help people recognize that it's not a quick fix, but it is a real thing. So that's the second Monday. The third Monday of every month, we will have a deeper dive discussion by Ben, which is about a topic about engagement or visioning or sense making, about using the map or getting started with the map. It will be basically a deeper dive into essentially non-technical things. And then the fourth Friday, we will have a full hour on purely technical things. The first part of that will be us introducing a feature that is either new or not relatively used or that is confusing to people. And then the second half will be open-ended questions and answers for tech stuff.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're at the top of the hour. If you've got to leave or if you want to leave, thanks for being here. It makes a very rich discussion and the community grows.